The other day, Scalise and I were talking about this great replacement. And one of the ideas that I posited in that conversation was that this idea of white people being replaced was really just it was a distraction tactic. And while I still agree with that particular idea, out of the conversation, the part that I think needs revised is the fact that I was describing that I thought that the tension between the U.S. and China was leading to a need to actually replace the slave labor we use in China and bring it on shores. But this weekend, Scalise ended up sending me some videos and different things to watch about the World Economic Forum, and that completely changed my mind. After listening to Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and all these guys talk, I realize, yes, it's a distraction tactic to tell people that this is about white people being replaced by the Hispanic population or brown people, which is what, depending on what news outlet you're watching, it's just the actual identification of the people that are replacing white people changes, but that's not important. I think that's a distraction tactic. What's actually happening here is a destabilization tactic and an expansion of the global slave labor force. I don't think it's actually replacing the Chinese slave labor as much as the Great Reset, I think, is their attempt to enter into a time, or at least part of it, is entering into a time where that type of slave labor, slave labor used in China is they're previously shy about this. It's one of the reasons we've sequestered some of that to countries like that and not had it happen in the U.S. in particular. But I think their shyness about that type of labor use is coming to an end. And this influx of immigrants that we have right now, at the speed that they're letting them in, is one, to destabilize the U.S. because us as a superpower is something that needs to come to an end, and then the second idea is to actually expand the use of that kind of labor to places like the U.S. or wherever they end up needing it. They're just not going to be as shy about it. Scalise, that's the change to my thesis on this one. I think in light of the World Economic Forum, I don't think it has anything to do with replacement at all.
Well, I love confirmation bias and I like my own biases, so I'm glad that you changed your mind because I tend to believe this is all about destabilization of the United States by and large. I think they had to run some psychological operations, some preparatory narratives to get us ready for that type of move, and I think they've accomplished it. So, one of the narratives that they had to
Yeah.
get out there and really establish in the U.S. consciousness is just what I would like to call philosophical absurdity. And what I mean by that is establishing two propositions that are mutually exclusive. So uh, the Democrats said defund the police. Then when it comes to election time, they say, no, I've never said it. I say fund the police. So clearly, you can't say you said defund and fund at the same time. So what they've done is they've
Yeah.
created what I think are just, it's called, in philosophy, it's called absurdity. There, it's just if one proposition is true, the other one necessarily cannot be true. But they've established this as within the matrix of the human mind in America. And so offshoring slavery to China probably wasn't tenable. They had to run basically a bit of preparation testing to see if America's news cycle would accept some measure of absurdity, and now they can onshore slavery here. Because remember, they still need to have their Black Lives Matter funding, the support of the blacks, etc., and therefore need to be able to run with the rhetoric that they're against slavery and reparations should be demanded, and reparations are really the only clear and justifiable way forward here because slavery is just horrific and I can't believe this happened. While at the same time, obviously they've been and all of us have been in some sense, saying okay to slavery. And now they can bring it
Yeah.
on shore because they've shown they probably have done group testing through all of this over the past 2 years to demonstrate that Americans probably memory is very short, and that you can get away with saying to mutually exclusionary things. You can say defund the police, and then you could say no, I was for funding the police, and maybe there's very little consequence for that. Now they can bring it on shore.
I don't know if it's as much as like the memory even needing to be short as much as like I genuinely think most Americans don't care. And if you can give them a platform where they can virtue signal and act, kind of play act like they're separating themselves from that reality for a brief moment, on video, where they can have their little clips and videos and different things saying that they believe, in equality, that's completely fine. That's that's replaced actual that's replaced actual virtue
Yeah, virtue signal
in our
right?
society.
Yeah. They just
Yeah,
want to be able to virtue signal.
yeah, because I mean, a lot of these guys are fans of the World Economic Forum, and you hear, people like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and that Australian ministress of truth, talking about this need for equality and different things. But interestingly enough, have you ever heard them bring up the Uyghur slavery? Like, never. That's one of those things that never happens, and that's to that end, you have to understand, a lot of these corporations depend on that kind of labor there in China, and it's absolutely brutal. And if these guys with that kind of money, that kind of reach, that kind of knowledge are not mentioning it, then they're fine with slave labor. That's not a problem, which means any of the narratives they have on U.S. soil that involves, equality and humans coming together and, all this stuff occurring is it's just virtue signaling on a different level. And like they clearly are fine and have been fine with slave labor for a long time, which brings in the Great Reset or, this Great Replacement idea. And yeah, I think the next level is we've done this for so long that we no longer have to offshore to China or India or you name it location, Mexico in a lot of situations too. A lot of our companies do manufacturing down there, but yeah, I mean you can bring it here too, and perhaps Bill Gates's purchase of farmland all over the U.S. You want to get real conspiratorial? Maybe they're buying up a lot of this land in order to kind of do something similar. The next step where it's not on China, but we can take it to pretty big pieces of land where people can't access and see the kind of labor that's happening there. It's just closer to home. We're using all available routes.
Well, Bill Gates is the largest farmland owner now in America, so there's nothing conspiratorial about that. Whatever you infer from that may be conspiratorial. But so take a look at this though. So what I would say, destabilization, the Great Reset, the Great Replacement is not about race. They want to turn it into race war because that serves their continuing, Marxist divide and conquer class warfare narrative. But they've destabilized the language. Really, if you look at what I'm saying in terms of, saying that you're against slavery while being for it, that's a destabilization of language. I'm for cops while being against it. Destabilization. Yeah. Males can be females. Destabilization. Right. So, I mean, if you really, and by the way, friends, if you go back and read the 1950s Marxist game plan for the destruction of America, I think there's about, I can't remember, I think there's about 30 main points. Destabilizing the language and the culture and the ethnic homogeneity, all of that is part of this game plan. So this is not some strange conspiracy, or some great analysis by Dr. Scalise. This is reading what is almost, 80 years in the making of the Marxist plotting. And I'm not saying the Marxists are the ones doing it now. I think we've been infiltrated. Many in our intelligence agencies are who are born Westerners. for whatever reason, want the destruction of traditional America, etc. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the game plan the Marxists created is really good for bringing us down because we're just too powerful a military force to deal with. So you just got to do
Yeah.
it. But so destabilizing language, and note the fact, and my doctorate is in worldview in many respects. Don't miss the fact that when America was bringing in all the immigrants before, they had to assimilate, right? If you learn about the melting pot that was America in the 1920s, and before that, the massive amount of immigrants coming here, they had to assimilate to our cultural ideals. And so, what the mass influx, and this is all part of United Nations policy and the World Economic Forum, they discuss this regularly on their websites and other news notes that they put out is mass migration. They act like it's this great good because you're doing the again virtue signaling. They hide everything under virtue, accepting the downcast, et cetera, et cetera. But what this does is they're not assimilating, and so now you're going to have a destabilization ethnically or racially. So you're losing homogeneity, which may or may not be relevant based on the cultural similarity. However, when you have no assimilation, there's no, I'm going to adopt the mindset or traditions or value system of America to become into America as an immigrant. I'm just going to come in with my value system from wherever I came from and my traditions and everything else. Then racial homogeneity matters. And you're not going to have it. So you have destabilization of races, you have destabilization of language, you have destabilization of cultural values and norms. And then to boot, a lot of these people are coming from countries where they basically had to conduct themselves as criminals just to survive. That is their way of life. Yeah. No criticism of them. It just that is what they have known, and now they're coming. It's
the reality,
yeah. Yeah, you're coming into our shores. Like, okay, pretty good invasion force without having to spend any money on guns or anything.
I think one of the other hilarious parts of the narrative that's happening here as far as this like white replacement happening. Well, when we watched all the videos of the World Economic Forum in Davos, can you please like tell me what the makeup of damn near every one of the people talking?
They're all
outside
white.
Of
except for Tedros, right?
Yeah. There was one.
Token black guys, the left would say. They had their token black.
Yeah, you know what? Well, I mean, they use that language, and quite honestly, that is pretty obviously the case with them. I mean, they put this, like, bullshit narrative out there all the time, and they've been pushing this stuff for who knows how long, and we're in, 2022 right now, and all these powerful billionaire white guys are getting up on the stage and, talking about white replacement. I mean, that's pretty much the narrative they're sending to the U.S. It's like, come on.
Like, yeah, I mean, you just look at it. I mean, it's just destabilizing, I mean, they're going against. So basically, they just project. I mean, it's almost so painfully odd. Like, you guys are white eugenicists, but you hide it, right? It's just like everything else. Well, you have to protect democracy while they advance authoritarianism on a level we've never seen, right? We're all about we hate slavery. Oh, we're gonna advance slavery. I mean, like, it's just everything's the opposite with these people, and so and then furthermore, there could be a sub narrative there too, though, where if you look historically. At least with the American narrative, like having a bunch of angry white men get together and think about how to resist is not played out well in history. From the Frenchies to the United States Rebellion, that hasn't gone real well. So angry white males are a very dangerous class historically.
Hey, they also had a token female Australian ministress of truth. So, it wasn't all males, although it was pretty much like it was pretty much white male billionaires talking about what was it? Klaus Schwab was looking out into the crowd and saying, "We in this room are the ones with the capability of changing the future, because we are the ones with the means."
Yes. Yep, that's what he said.
and,
See me.
and it's like,
You're like, is this
yeah,
you're like,
then,
this guy's a Nazi, dude.
yeah, and it's like, like looking out and calling them stakeholders, and that all the stakeholders need to act for the common good. And the funny thing about that, though, and I don't necessarily think anybody caught, it's hard to tell if he's actually saying that all the people in that room need to work together for the good of those in the room, or whether he's actually talking, kind of doing that whole like virtue signaling thing and saying, we all need to work together for the good of the larger community. Because the way it actually read out seemed like he was talking to them as stakeholders that needed to work together for the common good of those elites in that room.
And understand, people, there's many government officials there that are supposed to be having fidelity to their home nation, not some globalist Dr. Evil Klaus Schwab character. I mean, that dude is straight up Dr. Evil. Except he's real and he's scary. But he's like perfect
It is
James.
Worth watching.
Alex Jones is all time. He's straight up. He's like a James Bond villain. Like straight up.
I guess. What's really disappointing to me is like you watch James Bond and some of them are pretty corny, but like some of them you actually get like some good action, a fun film. And then you watch this and it's like that part of scripture where Satan gets paraded in front of the people at the end. And the nations look and it's like, this is who we were deceived by? I mean, you look at this group of people, Bill Gates and all this, and it's just like, really? Like, this is our villains? I mean, it's like a Bollywood version of freaking James Bond. I feel like Alex Jones gave it way too much credit.
Maybe.
Klaus Schwab is just an obnoxious prick. And I'm sorry, man, I really, I've tried to move away from the pejoratives and stuff like that, but watching that conference was a little bit rough to take, especially considering the narrative that we have pushed on us here constantly about just white this, white that, and it's like, really? And these guys, I mean, one thing you did have right is those guys in that room do have the means to shape the future.
Well, yeah, they certainly do. And I mean, that's what's frightening about it is that, and then when you start looking at the government list, and I can't remember where I saw this, but I saw a list of all the government officials from around the world there. I mean, there was huge amount. I mean, it's all from, Western countries that basically, and I think what we're seeing is like a information world war that's kind of blossoming out now in the other areas of war. But I think that's what we're seeing with Russia and China on the move. Because China, and Aaron, I put up on our Telegram the story about China saying, designating Soros a global economic terrorist. So,
When was that?
That was
Sorry,
September 2021. So not too long ago.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, I think what we're seeing is that, basically like the West is trying to circle the wagons. I think that whatever the Trump team has done and Bolsonaro in Brazil and some of the other populist movements in terms of taking away the power of the press, if you look worldwide, the press, any press that's controlled by the West is losing the trust of the people. And that's basically how the power brokers behind all these people control us. So I think they're circling the wagons. They're saying we're going to have to move with the accumulated power that we have because we're not going to have it much longer. And I think China and Russia are resisting and going to make that very hard for them because they either going to try to capture some global stake, like Klaus Schwab says, over the planet, and it's going to be now or never. I don't even think monkeypox 2.0, which is really, monkeypox COVID 2.0. I don't think that's going to sell. It doesn't look like it's selling.
No. You're right on that. Or it might be monkeypox 3.0. Because I'm pretty sure there was a 2018 narrative they used, and then I think there's one closer to like early. I want to say it was close to like 2005. I know there was a previous use of this or I don't know, at least coverage on it. There's 3 that I know of. The present, 2018, and then sometime before that.
Well, yeah, Bill Gates, you're right about that. So I don't know if it's 3.0, but I do know that I think it was 2017 or 2018. Shortly after Trump became president, Bill Gates was out there warning about a monkeypox pandemic that he thought was coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, that guy's basically like, if you guys want to think about it in a Marvel analogy, Bill Gates is like the herald of Galactus, and Galactus is the like World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, plotters and schemers.
Galacticus.
Oh, is it Galacticus?
Dude, that was one of my like favorite supervillains.
Well, it's just
that,
funny,
like,
right?
Really big one with the helmet that had the like like big like kind of like triangular branches off to the sides, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill Gates.
Yeah,
Bill Gates is like the herald of Galactus. Yeah, he's always coming right before destruction is going to occur, and he somehow knows exactly what it's going to look like.
It does seem that way. He seems to have an inside connection on the world's catastrophic occurrences.
I know. I would say if he was
including
godly,
this
I might say,
formula thing.
yeah, he'd be like a prophet. Wow, amazing.
Yeah. We didn't realize the internet exists and all these guys basically have, each other's phone numbers, very private phone numbers to all the heads of whatever, which actually reminds me, in Davos at the World Economics Forum, the hat that I'm wearing right now, LCX, hat tip LCX, the centralized, decentralized place to exchange your crypto, and very much approved by the World Economic Forum.
Were they there?
They made a little money. Yeah, they were.
Oh,
They were
that's
there.
funny. By the way, I have to tell you this, though. In a piece of satire, Putin goes beyond looking awesome yet again. And this really happened. So I'm just saying that, and this was, I don't know if I put it up or not, but it was yesterday or the day before, Putin and one of his security officials came out and said, we want you to declare like us the new world order. Basically, it's just this like, it's almost like a bad joke. They're like, they came out there like, you can declare us the new world order because we're disconnecting from, basically the monetary policy of the West, blah blah blah. But it was totally designed to be just a like piece of satire. But they really did it. But they really did it. It was hilarious. I don't know where I saw that.
And
it was great.
It is super hard to understand where Russia lands on the spectrum of what's happening right now.
I have no
idea. Like, I mean, part of me is like wax and wane between them being a part of this Great Reset and then possibly against it. I have no idea. It is so damn messy right now. It's just, I don't know what to say. I'm not even going to go into the conversations we've had about that one just because I do not want to get plastered as some kind of Russian apologist.
I don't either. And I don't want to get into the whole Q and is China and Russia all working together. The point is, like, you can't really know any of that stuff for certain, right? So I'm an apologist. I'm what's called an evidentiary apologist. So, when I argue for God, there's certain pieces of evidence from science and so forth that I can use to argue for God, and then there's other things like, human experience, or I can apply this from this feeling of faith I have when I believe. All those things might be legitimate. It's just the fact that, using that as, like, can I be 100% certain of that data? I don't know. And I don't want to get sidelined with all of that.
Yeah, and not to mention it's like, it's one of those things where in conversations, like, so many people want you to be like, who do you think's the hero? Who do you think's the enemy? And it's just like, I don't really know in the middle of this one. I'm trying to dissect whether or not I agree with certain individual moves with, different things that are occurring. Like, I have no illusion that Putin's a good guy. I also know that for well over a decade, the U.S. has been doing some really disgusting shit in the Ukraine And some of that he might not want to occur next to his border. So I don't know. Some of the actions he's taken, considering what we've been doing there for the last who knows how long, what, at least over a decade?
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's hard to tell who the good guy. Yeah. It's hard to tell who the good guy is in this one. I mean, if I were Putin right now and I knew that stuff was happening in the Ukraine, like, I might want control of that land at the moment. Especially when you have the Ukraine and then Europe and the U.S. Seeming to align in the way that they are presently, and you have an avenue of energy that at least Europe relies on, and you can use that as a way to possibly rein them back into your agenda. I mean, the stuff that's happening is kind of, it's horrible, but it's also one of those things as a nation state. It's like, what are you going to do? Leave that up to whatever.
And I think that's important. Let's highlight that for a second here. Stop and think about it. Friends, understand that there is, you don't, binaries, black, white, male, female, etc. So there's places where binaries are very helpful and are good. And it seems to be that the way that God has created the world. But in terms of playing out foreign policy, even personal people's moral behavior, I know of very few people where I would say they're good or they're totally evil. It's almost always just messy. And I'll quote J.R.R. Tolkien here, who wrote The Lord of the Rings and other great works. He pointed out that most of us live in the twilight. Okay, so there's degrees of light and degrees of darkness. Some of us are closer to the light. Some of us are closer to the darkness. It's the same thing with foreign policy, especially when it gets as messy as psychological operations, counterintelligence operations, and you got players from across the world on this thing. And then you got a press out there trying to tell us, like, Ukraine's good, Russia bad. And you just got to look at this and just say, like, no, like, this is insanely complex. And it doesn't mean we can't take sides or we can't take positions, but like Aaron's saying, it's probably more likely the case that you're going to be able to say, I agree with that, or I think that is reasonable, or that is evil, right? So, for instance, the United States, we fund with taxpayer dollars an abortion warehouse for baby parts at the University of Pittsburgh. It's in my Telegram. Look it up. Okay, I believe that's fundamentally evil. Now, the U.S. taxpayer, I believe many of them are abhorred by abortion. So, I can say I think the U.S. government and that policy that taxpayers were funding that is horrific, and that we assume some measure of guilt, while also saying I think most of us Americans readily have utter contempt for the practice. So, and that's the type of complexity we're looking at here. This isn't simple stuff.
No, it's not simple, and it's one of those things you should at least, like when you're considering sending your dollars or your cryptocurrency to some kind of movement in the Ukraine that's supposedly going to help the people on the ground, you might want to question the mechanisms with which with which those finances are actually being distributed, and whether that good intent that you have in your head is even going to come to fruition, which, if you're sending money to the Ukraine to help with that cause right now, I could promise you it's not. Okay, I can't promise, but the likelihood that it's going to what you think it's going to is something that should at least be in question. I think that's probably a safe way to frame that one. I wouldn't jump on and throw the flag on your damn Twitter account thinking that you're, supporting innocent people on the ground. The president there is not a good guy. Putin is also not a good guy. It's like, it's this whole movement the last little bit. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at what happened. Rand Paul stood in the way of it, and he was calling for a financial oversight in the way that the funds were distributed, and they totally rejected that proposal by Rand Paul. So the fund, $40 billion, went to, who did it go to? You think it's really getting to the people? I mean, you're a U.S. taxpayer. How much money does the government take and spend and do whatnot. And how much of it do you guys get? It's not much. So you really think $40 billion is going to Zelensky and you're really helping the people on the ground over there? Although Congress doesn't want any way to make sure that happens. Yeah, sound. If it smells like shit, it probably is. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, and honestly, it's probably literally been funneled into those guys that were running the World Economic Forum. I mean, it's basically a money laundering scheme to those guys, those elites in that room. A lot of them are at that level of elitism because we have blindly sent millions, billions, and possibly trillions to places in the world that have zero accountability. They just put a cause on the front end of it, and that money goes to who knows where. And we have to stop that stuff. We have to say, this ability for us to just continue sending that kind of capital, which equals power, to places like this with zero accountability is such a dangerous. It's wild. It's wild that that's the case, but it bolsters one of the previous ideas I had, and that is, a lot of the U.S. citizens do not care. They don't care about the slave labor. They do not care about actual equality between whites, blacks. Like you pick, you fill in the box of which race that you're speaking about at that moment in time. If they can do a TikTok or a Twitter post or something suggesting that they're about this, that's enough. That's pretty much what comes to the level of them being satisfied for supporting equality in this world. And otherwise, the amount of work it actually takes to keep that kind of money accountable going across borders, well, you might actually want blockchains for. But
let me read this. Hold on. I found this story. So this is what Putin did. So he basically reversed the meaning of the New World Order. So I found an article about it by Yahoo, and it's done by some probably liberal woman. She can't get it through her head that this is designed to be a piece of satire, to be insulting to them, and almost funny. Her title of hers is "Dictator Reveals Putin's Wet Dream of a New World Order." I tell you, lefties have no sense of humor. They just cannot catch it. So what it says is. What does it say? Hold on, I just got to find a little section of it here. Let's see. So, speaking on behalf of Putin, he urged the UN Secretary General to consider instituting a new world order in which all members of the international community have security guarantees, because it would be in the UN's interest to prevent the conflict from becoming a protracted with devastating consequences. Now, if you go on to read the rest of this, and I won't read it to you, but it basically, when Putin says, I want security guarantees, he's basically saying the New World Order should be a return to national sovereignty, and that if you don't want to go that direction, you could end up in a protracted long-term war, globalists. So, it kind of satirical and funny while being a kind of a very scary threat they're putting out there.
That reminds me of a news article or a clip that I watched recently where somebody was saying the future is anti-abortion, and I'm part of me is actually wondering in light of this particular story if you actually you go ahead and co-opt the whole New World Order story and push your agenda. I mean, because considering what we've done for the last 50 years. Doing the opposite would actually be the new thing. I mean, what they're suggesting is just the next step of this global tyranny. It's nothing new. It's just the consummation of what they've had wet dreams of for who knows how long. So if you actually wanted something new, it would be going back to, hey, we think life is something to protect. Hey, slavery is not a very good paradigm for work. New
World Order where babies can all live in the womb and outside the womb. Yeah. That's the New World Order. We'll call it the renewal. We'll make it Christianese. The renewal world order. Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, I think the New World Order is like, I mean, taking that one over and just like going straight, like just straightforward with it. The whole, satire's powerful, man. Like,
Well,
if you just like,
listen to this. Sorry, I just keep again. I'm not trying to be a Russian apologist, but I just think most people, if you just watch the mainstream media, you're definitely not getting any of this. So I just another piece of news. This is interesting. Over the weekend, Putin, and this is like so weird, right? He's supposed to be the tyrant of tyrants, but yet he sounds like he sounds like some of the stuff he says sounds like you're like representing freedom-loving peoples. Like, what's going on? So he says this: no world police can stop freedom-loving nations. Western nations that try to punish others with economic sanctions are overestimating their strength, Putin said to the Eurasian Economic Forum on Thursday. Quote, more and more countries in the world want and will have independent policies. No world police officer can stop this natural global process. No one is that strong. They face challenges within their nations, and I hope they realize that this policy has absolutely no prospects. So that's what
I mean, I hope at least that one point there that no one is that strong. I hope that is the truth. Like whether or not I believe he is saying that in earnest, like whether he actually believes what he's saying there. I hope that he's right. That there isn't anyone out there strong enough to do what they're proposing at the World Economic Forum. That's I pray that that's
Oh, well, Aaron, I don't know if you saw, I forgot to tell you, we had to update everyone. So they pulled the amendments, by the way. They pulled those down, and they didn't pass them. They pulled them down from being proposed.
Screw them. Like, leftists don't ever pull anything down. So, like, that narrative needs to be broken. There's never something taken away from the table. It's just like, shelved. We realized that the people didn't. That's absolute bullshit. They don't pull anything down. So please, and I'm not saying that that's what you're suggesting, Scalise, because I know that you agree there, but like
I do agree there. Yeah, they threw it up there to push back Bolsonaro and Brazil and huge amount of Southern American countries. They just got massive, and I think they just said, oh. But if not
Southern American,
yeah, Southern America. Sorry, South American.
I'm sorry, that was good.
That's good. I mean,
Southern
that's
American.
the stuff of.
They are the most Southern Americans. But yeah, sorry. Continue.
I'm just saying. So. I will say though, if not now, then when? Now, and I'm not saying it's not going to come back because I think they'll try again. I just think that if something like this was going to succeed, it's almost like they should have done it right in the middle of COVID. Would have been like the very logical time to do it. I don't know why they waited till right now when basically, it's just more and more people think this is a scam and less interested in anything in America at least. I don't know about the rest of the world. But, I just thought it was interesting that they pulled it down, and I'm thinking, they'll try again, but I'm thinking, is the situation actually going to improve for them? It just seems weird that they didn't try now, because I can't imagine it's going to get better. I feel like it would get worse. Well, their chances would get worse.
And I think the important thing to actually kind of maybe even further clarify is they don't actually stop trying. So the thing that we call like trying and then stopping trying is just like what the news pumps out as the narrative that day. So it's not like it's stopped. I mean, they intend to have a new world order and a one world government. And like that's something that's on the table. It's never taken off the table. So the pullbacks are only just strategic strategic narratives.
Yeah, how to repackage.
Yeah, or even give the right like this feeling that they succeeded, and I guess that's like one of those like shitty parts of being on the side of like those that actually don't control the narrative is you're constantly kind of talking about this. You're talking about this through the framework they provide. And it's like no, no, you guys didn't give up. You just got a little resistance, and you're repackaging this thing. Just like just like the Ministry of Truth.
Well,
like,
yeah.
They haven't given up on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You saw that they
So-
tried to repackage that as a private-public type thing off the books. So, they're just trying to figure out a different way to do it. I will say though that Truth Social, come join us on Truth Social, and
hold on. They repackaged it.
No.
My satire the other day was actually true. Hold on.
What?
Like, because I didn't see this news.
Oh
yet.
yeah,
you just said that they repackaged this.
They're trying to repackage it as a private entity that's getting public funding. It's the same thing they did with the election integrity stuff, where they basically have figured out how to rig elections by turning it into this it's handled by private companies. Dominion being the first one that comes to mind, right? And then we're going to fund it publicly, so Dominion can do the stuff that the government isn't allowed to do. Same thing with Twitter. So yeah, that's what they're trying to do.
So that satirical video I put out the other day, I did not know this news had actually come out. I just kind of, in the satirical video, I suggested that Corinne Jean-Pierre was going to be the new Ministress of Truth, or High Priestess of Truth, under the new rebranding. I was just kind of joking around because I know how they work with things.
Well,
but
I
didn't hear the story.
Yeah, no, that's happening. Now, I haven't heard much more about it. That happened a few days ago. I don't know exactly when, but I definitely saw that. So that's occurring. So yeah, you're not wrong, and it actually solidifies everything we just said with them not trying, just figuring out how to repackage. But I mean, the solution for this, friends, and this will help us be able to sleep better at night, give more time to our kids, without having to be so engaged all the time, is things like the growth of Truth Social, even Rumble. That's going to become part of the Donald Trump, and hopefully we can continue to for the perpetual future trust Trump. But the deal is, that we need right-leaning, right control. They don't have to advance the right. They just need to create a legitimate forum for free ideas, free exchange of ideas without anyone trying to censor anyone. That's all we really need. And then the mainstream media has to get replaced with an OAN. So we do need biased right-leaning media to come to the prevalence of all the controlled left-wing media. We do need that. And when that happens, then what Aaron's saying, where they can just keep trying to repackage and sell it a different way, that'll become much more difficult for them to be able to do and make our battle a lot easier.
And also, a movement, OAN is great. I think the future, though, and I hope this is something that we can achieve, is just not necessarily something exactly like Project Veritas, but something small like that, locally and any number of different places, where you don't have this single organization trying to project itself around the nation, but start having not necessarily guerrilla journalism, but something more, even traditional, that is controlled, actually controlled locally, where you have separate news organizations in different places with journalists. And
shoot, Aaron, I don't have a job. Maybe I should start that. We'll call it Project Integritas of Florida.
Yeah. No, I mean, it would be awesome though, right? Where if you actually had news agencies something other than Fox, where you've essentially just got representatives of this national shit show, they're getting the narrative cast down to them from on high. I mean, they do cover some local news, but it's always through the lens of this New York Fox. You don't even get the local spin on it. You don't get the local just grit. It would be nice to have organizations that didn't have that body of control, where I mean, some of the people even locally here, when they get out of line, right, the higher ups that actually control the whole thing from wherever their offices are, actually, those people don't keep the jobs very long, and it would just be nice.
Yeah, that's the nature of the bigger the bureaucracy grows, the more specialized the narrative becomes, and then job security comes over. I kind of experienced that when I worked at Liberty, actually. But on that note, we are coming close to the end of our time together, friends. And although I'll be assaulted as using a token black person. I would like to close with Candace Owen, because I think she's actually smart, and she actually makes a great point here, and I love how in your face she can be about stuff. Now, I know that has nothing to do with the color of her skin, but as a righty, I know I'm not allowed to use token black people, but I'm going to risk it here. Go ahead and quote her. Quote, "I'm so glad that the world has awakened to the fact that Bill Gates is a biological terrorist. It makes me happy that his money spent controlling the media narrative and fact-checking networks has had entirely no effect on what has become plainly obvious." End quote. And Bannon, Steve Bannon of Bannon's War Room, quoted that, so I thought that was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and on that note of token black people, no.
Or white guys quoting a black woman. How dare we try to use their prestige as being black and women to advance our white supremacy, right? So.
But I mean, I feel like after watching the presentations at the World Economic Forum, I feel like we're on safe ground.
Yeah,
those guys had one of the most powerful forums in the world, and they had a really hard time finding anyone that wasn't white.
Yeah, excessively white. In the realm of where a lot of really white people have come from, there in Switzerland, I mean, even that is, come on, that is like white supremacy central, Switzerland.
It would be nice, right, to be able to get, like, not have conversations that involve this so much, like, where it literally was just, can we talk to somebody based on, like, what they're actually producing, what they're actually, meriting, just, this whole,
Yeah, the whole idea of, like, we should love excellence because God's the author of all things great and wonderful. Therefore, as people attune themselves to ever degrees of merit and excellence, we should praise that rather than focusing on things that marginal or have zero effect on your ability to perform excellence or not.
Yeah, and actually being able to just, like, that's what, honestly, I hate leftism. I'm just gonna, I'll put it out there, and this is one of the biggest reasons why, is the fact that, like, out in the public, you constantly have to qualify this shit, and you can't just, me as a white person actually talk to a black person and not have this, well, my people versus your people? What the hell is that? Like, in all honesty, if we're all human,
it's bogus, exactly. Even the fact is, it's a human race. Scientifically, that's what we are. There's skin color is just, I don't even know what to call it, but we've been sold that is a class or a race distinction. It's not a race distinction. We're the same race.
They disallow you. They disallow you to actually, like, engage with somebody that is not your own race as just another human being. And
that's how God wants it. They can't have what God wants, right? Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Gentile. You're all one in Christ, right? They do not want you unified around this notion of, let's call it theomorphisms. God, we have God's image, right? And therefore we are all.
Yeah. And that's
we
not
have
to say
dignity,
that
and we're human, and we should unify and around ever degrees of excellence called God, right? They do not want that. God is the biggest problem for them because He is the authority from which they cannot escape.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you don't, like, see the differences and glory in those, like the beauty of the array of different just excellencies that are both thought related and also skin related. The difference of just like mountain ranges, different species, the different different looks of.
For my theologians out there, this is called the principle of plentitude, part of theological aesthetics. But it's the fact that the myriad of varieties is actually an enhancement for the beauty of something.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome, but when it comes to, talking about ideas and talking about capabilities and this complete stop where it's like my people v your people, it's like, no, we are our people. Black people, you're my people. White people, same thing, like vice versa. Black people, white people are your people.
Asian people,
White
you're
people,
my people.
Black people, your people. Yeah, Asian people, you're my people.
How dare we get this biblical?
Like
we need to repent to the demonic entities, principles, and powers of the World Economic Forum. How dare we?
Yeah, the power though of that narrative, like I understand why they keep perpetuating it. Because if we continue to be this divided, it makes us easier to control. And that's the thing that pisses me off about this one so much is so much of our time in the public is spent trying to cross that hurdle. And man, if we could just get past that, like,
well, yeah, because they have to sell them. Remember, this is Hegelian dialectic. The government wants to sell themselves as savior and solution and problem solver. So they got to keep us divided and at one another. That way, they're the middleman that we go to resolve things. Right? I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah, and the more problems we solve together, like closer to the individual level, and that's going to involve like varying like group sizes, you name it, but closer, I mean, those solutions we come to are ones that are provided by ourselves, like, you know, amongst smaller groups, the better off we're going to be. And that means black, white, Asian, Indian, you name it, like all together, realizing that we are each other's people, and we also celebrate each other's cultural differences that are good.
Right.
There are cultural differences that aren't. Yeah, no. It's been a fun, man. I've loved this Memorial Day, dude. This conversation has been fantastic, and I enjoyed the hell out of myself. Scalise, thank you all.
We salute you, America.
Yeah.
Yeah.